We have arrived at the Autodromo Juan Manuel Fangio in Balcarce for the running of the Argentine Grand Prix, the first ever top class race to be held in Argentina, and the first ever top class race to be hosted by backup host Dioca. Coming into this week where both championships could be decided, two drivers have been making the news this week. The first team news of the day comes from the renamed Sauber, as they have announced after so much speculation the current Lamborghini driver and last season's Brazilian Grand Prix winner Rahul Patel will be joining the team in 2023. Rahul has had a mixed 2022, with the second half of the season coming good for him. He currently lies 13th in the Drivers' Championship, 13 points behind Jake Galloway, and his current team Lamborghini lie 5th in the Constructors, 1 point ahead of AlphaTauri. The first half of the season for Rahul was filled with a lot of frustrations, being involved in incidents that at times weren't his fault and at times was his fault. However, the second half of the season for Rahul started to come good, with his performances being vital in Lamborghini continuing their point streak which they have had since Abu Dhabi last season. Rahul will be relieved to know that he will still be in the top class next season, and he'll be looking to have a better 2023 season with his new team. He will partner alongside Bence Valdinga, who will remain with the team for another season. This does mean that there will be at least one vacant seat available at Lamborghini next season. However, it is expected to be both, due to Laura Chung also making it clear in her sign-ups that she wants to leave Lamborghini at the end of the season, with her being linked with both Mercedes and Haas. 5 contenders emerge, which consists of current Haas driver Michael Mocho, should he not be retained by the American team, newly crowned DTM champion Rubino Gonzalez, former top-class driver Robert Ionescu, current F2 driver Jafari Blackwood, should he miss out on a Toyota drive, and 5-time top-class champion and current Lamborghini reserve driver Florian Volker. It will be interesting to see who Lamborghini has as their lineup. In terms of David Kupark, who's missed out on Sauber, it's not doom and gloom for him just yet, as he is linked with a possible move to McLaren in 2023 should Joseph Willows leave the team to become Franco Lopez's replacement at Mercedes. F2 title contenders Wojtek Kulizec and Nicolas Zorbach are also linked with this seat, and it will be interesting to see who McLaren chooses should Willows leave for Mercedes. The second and final team news of the day comes from Ferrari, as they have announced that current Aston Martin driver and Italian driver Andre Verderi will be joining the team for 2023. Andre has had a decent season in 2022, despite this season's Aston Martin going backwards compared to last season. He currently lies 16th in the Drivers' Championship, tied on points with Bence Valdinga, and his current team Aston Martin lie 10th in the Constructors, 2 points behind Alfa Romeo. Despite some races where he looked off the pace, Andre has been able to get the Aston Martin to places it shouldn't belong, such as Hungary and Bahrain, where he was able to finish 7th and 8th respectively, earning the team some much needed points. Andre will be happy to know that he'll be joining the Scuderia next season, and he'll be hoping to have a good first season with them in 2023. He will replace Jake Galloway, who will not be on the top class grid next season due to missing out on the sign-ups, and he will partner alongside Chris Chatfield, who will remain with the team for a third successive season. This means, as expected, Aston Martin will have an entirely new lineup in 2023, with both Andre Verderi and Johannes Martins leaving to join other teams in 2023, and Andrei Sazonov making his top-class debut with Aston Martin next season. 3 contenders emerge to be Andre's teammate in 2023, which are 14-time DTM winner and ex-top-class driver Victor Ibobo, current World Champ Car driver Gabriel Gomez, should he miss out on Toyota, and fellow F2 driver Joseph Frederic Souto, who is determined to make his top-class debut next season. It will be interesting to see who ends up alongside Andrei Sazonov in 2023. And that is it for the penultimate episode of the GP4 OC News Series 10. Just 7 more seats are left to be announced now, which consists of the remaining seat at Aston Martin, both seats at Lamborghini, and the 4 biggest ones, which are the remaining seat at McLaren, the remaining seat at Haas, the remaining seat at the returning Toyota team, and the remaining seat at Mercedes. The final team news of the season will break at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix at the Yas Marina circuit. Who will get the final 7 seats, which drivers will miss out on a drive, which reserve drivers will be announced early, and what will be the lineup for the 2023 Formula 2 season? Tune into the final practice session of the season in 2 weeks' time at the Yas Marina circuit on the Yas Island in the United Arab Emirates. Hello everyone and welcome to round 20 of the 2022 GP4 Offline Championship, the penultimate race of the season. We are here at a new circuit, the Autodromo Juan Manuel Fangio in Balcarce, for the first ever Argentine Grand Prix. I am JW97 and I'm joined today for the first time in quite a while by Blake Moore. Blake, are you there?
Sorry, I was just trying to close the window, but hello everyone. I am utterly confused how I got here in this paddock of Argentina, but hey, at least I'm here now. I'm Blake Moore, and yeah, honestly, I am actually honestly expected to see some absolute hopefully some good times at Argentina, especially at the Autodromo Manuel Fangio.
Yep, indeed. Well, we might as well get on with the practice session then, just as soon as Flo removes the graphic from the OBS, and then we can get on going with practice here for the Argentine Grand Prix. Of course, this is the first top-class race to be hosted by Flo, and you can imagine from what I mentioned to him, what he's said to me earlier, he is a little bit nervous, it must be said, but he'll do okay, I'm pretty sure he will. So, yeah, anyway, without any further ado, I think we might as well get on with the practice session then. A 40-minute session, of course, as per usual. And, well, we are about to get underway very, very soon then, just as soon as the graphic is off, which I think it is, judging from what I could see on the stream, although there's no gameplay being shown on the screen at the moment. So, no rain for practice at this stage. Now there is. So, yeah, here we go then. So, well, it just seems like we forgot to mention that bit with Flo, with the loading screen, but we'll ignore that. And, so, yeah, we'll ignore that. It's because, of course, if you don't know how GP4 works, it's basically...
the game God damn it. Unbelievable.
The game has crashed just as we're about to go on to practice there, which is a little bit of a bummer there, but it should get sorted out pretty soon. We were just on the screen, and then Flo's... well, the stream that he uses to show us on Discord decided that, no, we're not going to show that now. So,
yeah, the whole game
just bear with... as Flo will get the game restarted, and then we'll get underway with practice, of course. I'm hoping as well, from what we saw with F2, hopefully it doesn't crash after the session finishes.
It does all the time.
Oh, right. So,
Ow, that is.
yeah,
it's
so
Balcarce, for some reason it does that.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I'll have to figure out a way down on how to get the gaps there at the end of the race. I might have to use the graphics down at the bottom there to try and work that one out, but... that's pretty much that then, as we wait for practice to finally get underway here at the Autodromo Juan Manuel Fangio. Apologies for the crash.
And I've been disconnected.
As my Discord decided to play up there, as I just briefly cut out. So.
Wait! I thought I just disconnected for a second there. I was scared.
Yeah, my Discord decided to play up there just as Flo's just sorting things out. But we are underway. We've yet to get the stream yet on our side on Discord. I guess Flo's just waiting for the game to load first, and it now has loaded, so we should be able to get the stream up on OBS, which we have got now. And we're about to get underway then for the practice session here at Balcarce. Obviously, people who watch the test race, of course, on the OC Discord will know this. Now, I should point this out as well, because I know that Michael Mocho is wondering about this. In terms of the reserve driver role, because I know that Nicholas Zorbat is meant to have a session, we're going to wait until Yuri comes back for that. So, Zorbat will get a practice session, but it will be at Abu Dhabi instead of Argentina. So I just thought I would point that one out. So it is just the main drivers out here for this 40-minute practice session. But Q-Pop is the first driver out on the track, and whilst we're out here, we might as well talk about the breaking news, Blake, whilst we're here as well, because we had two newses for the penultimate episode. One being that Rahul Patel will be moving to Sauber next season. Of course, he made it clear that he wanted to leave Lamborghini, and well, he's going to be at Sauber next season alongside Bent Valdinger. Could it be a good move for him, do you think?
Yeah, it honestly really depends about the car performance between how it actually is, because I kind of forgot what the car performance is during the sign-ups was. I know for a fact, if Sauber get it right, they could have an amazing season. If they get it wrong, I think it could go into the toilet really quickly. It really depends how the start of the season comes about next year, and Kupog started very late for the last corner.
Yeah, indeed, that is the typical line that we have here at Balcarce. They normally take a wider line into that corner before they cross the start-finish line. But that was a lap of Balcarce whilst we were speaking there. The other big news as well that came from the penultimate news video of the season is the fact that Andre Vaderi will be moving to Ferrari next season as a result of Patel moving to Sauber in 2023. And, well, I think it will be very interesting to see what Vaderi can do in that Ferrari alongside Chris Chatfield.
Yeah. I know for a fact Vaderi wants that move for about, like, I don't know how many seasons that he wants that move to Ferrari, but I don't think that Ferrari Ferrari this year, I remember in the pick order, Haas were ahead of a Ferrari. I think they were, and I think Ferrari. This is gonna be like a learning year for Ferrari to how these two get on without any, if they could get a race win or like a podium, I call that as a win. But to be slower than Haas is going to be a bit of a challenge to make up ground for the next 2 seasons.
Indeed, especially the season that Haas have had this season, where they currently lie 4th in the Constructors, and they've actually got quite a decent advantage in front of their nearest rivals, which is Lamborghini. Of course, the gap between Lamborghini and AlphaTauri coming into this race is 1 point, of course, as we've got some lap times on the board. Of course, for Franco Lopez, this will be a special race for him because it is his first ever home race, and it could be a race where he could wrap up the title this week as well. Of course, he wasn't able to do it at Bahrain, but he comes into this race with a 27-point lead in front of Evan Byrne, who, of course, won the last race at Bahrain to get the gap down to 27 points. And, well, what would the scenes be like if Lopez, in his first ever home race, was to wrap up the title here?
I feel like I'm going to say one thing, Flares. That's all I got to say about that.
Indeed, and well, Lopez will be hoping he can wrap up the title here at his first ever home race. I mean, we have tried for a long time, let's not forget, to try and have a home race, to try and have an Argentine race. Let's not forget, of course, back in 2020 when we revealed the news that Malaysia was replacing Sochi for obvious reasons. Of course, we did reveal as well that we was originally meant to go to Argentina for the 2021 season instead of Malaysia, which was meant to be at Buenos Aires, but due to issues with that track, we ended up not going there as a result, and we've ended up, it's taken a bit longer, but we finally found a circuit that's suitable for the Argentine Grand Prix in the form of the Autodromo Juan Manuel Fangio, and I know there's probably going to be a lot of people here who are not familiar with this racetrack. Of course, it was obviously, as you can guess by the name, named after Argentina's greatest ever racing driver, Juan Manuel Fangio, winning the championship 5 times. Located in Balcarce, of course. It is technically, you could say, a figure-of-8 track, or as Kurisu mentioned in the commentary box yesterday during the Formula 2 qualifying session, it's kind of like a... in fact, she described it as something else during the commentary yesterday, but I can't exactly remember. She didn't describe it as a figure-of-8 track, but it is the second figure-of-8 track we've got on the calendar because, as you can see, it does quickly cross in on itself right on the middle of the racetrack there. It's got a very interesting chicane as well, right at the end of the circuit as well, which... surprisingly enough, on GP4, it's actually quite nice and flowing, really. I think in real life, it's not as nice and flowing and rewarding. Of course, there isn't actually any racing around this track anymore in real life, for anybody who is curious as well, because unfortunately, back in 2011, this track did see a fatal accident, which basically stopped racing from happening here. However, this track still gets used to this day for track days. I think you can find them on YouTube as well, but I guess in a way for the OT, we've kind of revived it back to life, really, and to host it the first ever Argentine Grand Prix, and hopefully it should provide a very exciting race here. And for Flo, he'll be hoping that it's a very successful first ever top class race he is hosting. Of course, for anybody who is not aware of this, of course, it is Flo who's hosting this week, and that is because Yuri is on vacation at the moment. Well, he's about to go on to vacation, but he will be back for the finale in Abu Dhabi, which, if anybody didn't see the news, that will be happening not next week, but in 2 weeks' time. It's been pushed back a week to allow Yuri to host the finale, regardless of whether there's a title decider or not, and also to allow him to be in the final call when we decide the final 7 seats, of course, because as everybody saw, and I could see from the reaction in the stream chat, a lot of people are surprised that there are 7 seats left to be decided. And well, I did predict it, of course, a couple of races ago, that we could be expecting quite a lengthy finale news video for the season.
Yeah, I can see loads of seats probably going to get filled in the finale, especially in the Formula 2 seats as well. With the it will extend it to be even longer than expected. So this will be a hefty finale for practice, for the start of practice, and as a venue on its own. So yeah.
Yep, indeed, and well, I don't know how long the episode is going to be, but just be aware of that. Of course, we will have Kurisu back to announce the Formula 2 lineups, because I have found a way to finally record her voice again, so that's all good. So you'll be hearing her voice again when the Formula 2 lineup gets revealed in 2 weeks' time. Of course, speaking of Formula 2, because later on tonight at 7 PM BST, because it is going to be quite a busy one for Flo today, it must be said, and we will have the Formula 2 finale here, which will see 3 drivers fighting it out for the championship, that being Wojtek Kulizec, Nicholas Zorbach, and of course Hento Sinanome, and obviously Kulizek is considered to be the favourite given the gap he's got, but who knows really what that finale could have in store a little bit later.
Yeah, this could be interesting to see that that the three drivers come into the last race of the year, coming into the final race, really close to each other, and could have a total fight on their hands. And Kirishima went very deep into the first corner, but frankly didn't hit a wall, so that's nice.
Indeed, I was actually going to bring up about the driver mistakes here, because we did see this quite a lot during the Formula 2 qualifying session yesterday, really. Drivers being prone to quite a few mistakes, and it could be down to the fact that there are quite a few bumps around on the racetrack, which could provide a little bit more of a challenge for these drivers. So that's definitely something that we need to keep an eye on, especially when we get to qualifying a little bit later on.
Yeah, indeed. I think when you mentioned the bumps, I immediately think of Sebring. And, you know, this circuit's a bit of a figure-8 one at that. I honestly think it's just Sebring and Suzuka. Oh, God, yeah, he's actually struggling, yeah.
Definitely getting...
not cope with the bumps. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. I was just about to say that. It seems that clearly drivers having issues with the bumps around here at the moment. There is a few bumps here, but I guess it could add... I guess, you know, sometimes bumps can add character to a circuit, and this is definitely, I guess, one of those examples you could say. And you can definitely say as well, when we get to the start of the race tomorrow, it's going to be a very interesting run. It's quite a short run down to the first corner, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of Portimao, where it's a downhill run to the first corner, really, and anything could really happen coming out of that first corner, really. So that's something to bear in mind. As we look at Sontag, who's just making his way around this long swinging right-hander. Meanwhile, Dominic Ticelli has just gone up into 13th place in the Alfa Romeo, and for Ticelli, he'll be wanting to forget what happened at Bahrain last time out. It wasn't exactly the race he was hoping. 2 front wing changes, and then eventually getting taken out by a wheel which came off of David Kupok's car, where he went off as Galloway has a lock-up going through into the first corner there, but luckily able to keep it out of the wall. Everybody able to stay away from the walls at this stage, as we have just over 30 minutes left of this practice session here at the Autodromo Juan Manuel Fangio in Balcarce. As Galloway now then making his way around the corner now, then through this long right-hander. Quite a lot of long sweeping corners around here, and it is quite a fast circuit, it must be said. We're looking at the lap times that we're looking at from George Roque. I expect them to possibly be a little bit faster when we get to qualifying with lighter fuel load, but yeah, as expected, and I think even some people were predicting it yesterday during the Formula 2 qualifying session, that we could be expecting lap times around the same sort of lap times that you would get around the Red Bull Ring.
Yeah, indeed. Especially this track. I mean, on paper, this track looks long, but it's incredibly short. So I expect speeds to be very quick, and also, engineer, can you please be quiet?
Just ignore him. It's all right.
I'll ignore Jeff then.
But anyway, meanwhile, Lopez, the home favourite, has just gone to the top. Only by 8 thousandths, though, ahead of George Roque, as Sonto's trying to get a bit of slipstream from Bence Valdinger in front. As meanwhile, Quag is going to try and have a go at Martins into this right-hander, not able to pull the move off there. And, well, I noticed as well there is some overtaking opportunities. I think the pit straight is an overtaking zone, especially if you've got a very powerful engine. So, really, straight line speed around this track could be quite crucial around this racetrack.
Yeah, indeed. And, well... Yes, indeed. That's all I gotta say. The engine, it really depends on engine power outputs and all that shenanigans, and also don't forget aerodynamics because of the fast sweeping corners as well on the track, especially the ones when you go into the little like infield section and then the one before and the corner before it takes it into the chicane. So I'm just losing my voice here.
That's all right. I think I don't know if you're suffering from hay fever, but I've been suffering quite a bit with hay fever. Yeah, I've been suffering quite a bit of that this morning as well. It's a nightmare. Don't have it if you haven't got it. But yeah, that's that really. But for anybody who's curious as well, what the laps are going to be like around here, it is going to be 67 laps around here at Balcarce. I know that both Franco and Xavier were trying to guess that last week in Bahrain, but I can assure you that it is 67 laps around here, because it is, even though the lap times don't suggest it, the distance around this track is roughly the same sort of length as Quark has a bit of a moment through into the chicane bay, but it is the same sort of length as both Hockenheim and Fuji, really. So That's something to bear in mind there. We're looking at Car, who's coming back into the pits. That currently in 6th place is Armar Car, as Martin's going through the chicane. Oh, having a bit of a moment over the curb there, and that could be something to watch out for there, as Roke actually tried to have a go of him into the chicane, and it kind of put Martin's a little bit off there through that chicane. So at the moment, Roke currently getting held up by the Aston Martin. I wonder if he's going to pass him down onto the straight, which I think he's going to do, in fact, as they go side by side down towards the first corner. In fact, no, he doesn't, in fact, the other Red Bull of Evan Byrne, who's actually just gone up into 4th place, is now going to get held up by this train. As we look at De Rosa, and you noticed quite as well, we saw this in Formula 2 yesterday as well, that drivers liking to really explore the limits of the track, really, with the curbs, it must be said, and that's obviously something to pay attention to when we get to the race tomorrow here at Balcarce, as De Rosa just going around the right-hander now. Then we're on the board of George Roke, who's trying to have a go at Martins into this little hairpin there, but I don't think he's pulled the move off. Joseph Willows, he's up on his personal best, going underneath the crossover section, and that you can see where the crossover point is. Rather than Suzuka, where it starts off by going underneath the bridge, here at Balcarce, it actually starts going over the bridge before you actually go under it onto the racetrack. There's quite a lot of undulation around this racetrack. And that's pretty much that. Anyway, on to, might as well talk about some other things about Bahrain. We mentioned that Evan Byrne took the victory at the Bahrain Grand Prix. A crucial win that to keep his championship hopes alive. But we talked about last week as well. Given the gap is 27 points going into this, Byrne does need to beat Lopez here again if he wants to keep his title hopes alive. Because if he doesn't do that, as Martins has a lock-up through into the first corner, if he doesn't do that, then the championship is over.
So I think I would say is that if Evan doesn't DNF at all, well, I can probably jinx it by probably next session he might crash onto a wall. Right, professionals. Right. I think I can say is that and also George Rowe as well, but I wouldn't say he's the actual contender for the championship. He's just basically Evan's backup support, but I would say that I think Evan realistically needs to finish second or first, and Franklin must have an absolute miserable race to make sure that Evan is in touching distance between Lopez and all.
Yeah, indeed, and Byrne will be hoping he can keep the title fight going into 2 weeks' time at Abu Dhabi, but he really needs to dig deep, because it's safe to say that throughout the last part of the season, Byrne hasn't at times had the pace compared to Lopez, and at times has been caught up in so many incidents. That pit lane exit could be quite interesting in the race as well. It seems that the people on the track have to lift off a little bit when the drivers come out of the pit lane there. It's a very unique pit lane, it must be said, around here at Balcarce, as Lopez gets held up here by one of the Ferraris. I think that's Jake Galloway. As more cars start to emerge from the pit, just as Lopez overtakes the Ferrari there, heading down towards that first corner. I think the Renault's about to do the same with that Williams there at that part of the track. So, I think the pit straight is where we could see quite a lot of overtaking as Lopez got the move done. And did he... in fact, Galloway having a moment, having to correct himself. I think he might have caught a bump in the middle of the track there, and it's kind of unsettled the car. But, very lucky that he was able to correct it. And so far, we've not had too many errors at this point in this practice session. Well, not major errors, in fact. We've had lockups. We haven't had any major ones in this session. As Galloway, in fact, obviously his lap's ruined, but he is going to get some much-needed slipstream from Lopez in front. Obviously, Carr officially was out of the title fight at Bahrain. George Roke still is mathematically in it, but I think it's safe to say, Blake, that if he wants to keep his title hopes alive going into Abu Dhabi, he's going to need a lot more luck than what Byrne has. As I think Blake has just disappeared there, just as I asked that question there, because he's kind of gone a little bit silent. But anyway, we're on boy Martin just getting a run here on Felix Sontag, and you could just tell the differences there between the Mercedes power and the Lamborghini power going down at that part of the track. You're back there, Blake, because I can hear some movement on your microphone. Are you back? Are you back, Blake?
Well, yeah. Yes, I am. It's because, well, hopefully it's not answered, but I think there was a screen freeze on my screen. So yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I was just asking you really, because obviously last time out in Bahrain, Carr was officially out of the title fight. George Roke is still mathematically in it, but I think if he wants to keep his title hopes alive going into Abu Dhabi, he's going to need a lot more luck than what Byrne needs.
Yes, if George Roke actually if George Roke actually wants to win this championship, He needs to be extremely lucky. He needs to be even more luckier than Man City. Man City. Sorry, I just had to pull that out there. Well, of course I do. Well, okay. So what I was about to say was then I think George Russell literally needs to cheat. Needs to cheat like actual like reality if he actually wants to. If he actually still needs to be in the title fight going into Abu Dhabi, but hopefully he can because I think the second part of the season he's done really well in the second half of the season.
Indeed, I mean we were nicknaming him when he was at Racing Point, Mr. Second Half. It's kind of a similar nickname to what we gave Florian Volker in the past, but obviously wasn't able to pick that up in 2021, but in 2022 he's been able to pick it up. But I think it's probably, if we're being realistic, a little bit too late for him to get the title. Whilst we were speaking there, of course, Roke just went to the top of the timing sheets with a 1 minute 5.620 around this racetrack as we ride on board with Rahul Patel, who's just making his way over the bridge there, which is where the crossover point is, heading towards turn 2 on the racetrack. In fact, is it turn 2? Because I think from what I understood from Kurisu yesterday in the Formula 2 commentary, that I think some of the kinks actually get classed as corners around here, and yes, they do in fact. So yeah, quite interesting indeed, really, as some of the kinks get named that. So anyway, we're now looking at Perinen, who's currently in 6th position, and it's safe to say he was looking like he had some pretty good pace at Bahrain last time out, was fighting towards the front, but in the end just didn't really make his I think it was his 2-stop strategy work out in the end, and he ended up getting only finishing 7th in the race as a result. So you could say in a way, once again, Renault not really making the best strategy calls, clearly underestimating the fact that the hard tyres that we had at Bahrain weren't really degrading that much.
Yes, I think Renault. I mean, even though they haven't had an absolute interesting history when it comes to drivers, especially a couple of years ago, but I'm not going to name any names here. But I would say I think Renault. I think right now they need to pick it up. I mean, even though they got podiums, but I think if they want to improve as a team, they need to iron out some nasty bugs in their team.
Yeah, indeed, and I mean this has been a thing that we've noticed since the start of the fantasy era that they've. Well, in fact, I think even before the fantasy era there was some niggles. Even though they've seemed to have improved in terms of performance, it just seems like they've got these bad habits. They're still creeping up on them, and it's definitely been costing the team quite a lot. And they'll be hoping they can iron that out. Obviously, we know that Quarg is obviously staying at the team for next season. He'll have a new teammate in the form of Johannes Martins. Perrin, of course, will be leaving Renault at the end of the season. Whether it's with Mercedes or Toyota, though, that's going to be another question, and that will be an answer that we will find out in 2 weeks' time at Abu Dhabi, whether it ends up being Mercedes or Toyota for the man who we're currently riding on board with at the moment, as he was actually up on his personal best in the first sector there. As meanwhile, De Rosa having a little bit of difficulty trying to pass the Williams there, trying to go around the outside with this right-handed there, but he can't make it stick, so still getting held up by the Williams at this point in time. As we ride on board with Valdinger, who's just coming up towards the end of Sector 1, in fact, currently finding himself in 17th place. And it's safe to say, we talk about strong second halves of the season, we talked about with George Rowe. I think Valdinger, it's safe to say, has had a very good second half of the season. I mean, he's been branded a P10 merchant in this series, and well, he's been getting the points that Alfa Romeo need at the moment, especially with the fact that they've been a lot closer to McLaren than they probably thought that they were anticipating, really, given how backwards McLaren have gone this season.
Yeah, I think, I don't know why people are starting making like teams just for finishing consistently, which I find it honestly to be weird. Well, I honestly don't get it why people could call, you know, like let's say for example, Vance Fowling, P10 merchant. He's getting literally consistent points for the team, which is good for the team as a whole. But I think I would say that if Benz actually wants to, I think Alfa Romeo could have a good chance to be in a midfield fight for next season. But yeah, I think Ben's had a really good second half of the season compared to his first half of the season. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Just going to point something out that Franco Gama mentioned in the stream chat. Do ignore the brightness of Valdinga's Alfa Romeo. I think Yuri mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. It's an issue that he's not been able to solve really with Valdinga's car, because for some reason Decelli's car doesn't have this issue, but Valdinga's car for some reason has, and he's been unable to find a fix at the moment. So, yeah, you might have to ignore that, I'm afraid. Luckily, it's not too much of a problem when we get to the night races, of course, and especially when we get to Abu Dhabi, which is obviously a night race, because unfortunately you can't have a twilight race on Grand Prix 4. It's either a day or a night race that you can only have. That shouldn't be a problem for Valdinga's car. It should be less of an issue, but unfortunately when it comes to day races, that's going to have to be an issue that you're going to have to sadly put up with, I'm afraid, because it's just a little bit of a weird one, really. But yeah, that's unfortunate.
You just got to live with it, unfortunately. It's
it's just one of them things, I'm afraid. Meanwhile, we just saw Patel there making a bit of an error going around that, I think it was turn 2 there, he just went around. But, well, no, in fact, not turn 2, because on the track map that we have, that's actually classed as turn number 7 on the racetrack, because as mentioned, a load of kinks on the racetrack are actually classed as corners around here at Balcarce for some strange reason. But there we are, as we look at Valdinga again with the shiny Alfa Romeo. Of course, the second to last race for Alfa Romeo before they go back to their Sauber name in 2023, and it is, of course, the penultimate race for AlphaTauri, of course, because they'll be pulling out of the series at the end of the season. Of course, Toyota will be taking up the slot that was vacated by them, and of course, Franco Lopez will be driving that Toyota next season. The question is, will he be taking the potential number 1? Because I know that Lopez has mentioned that I think he would like to keep the number 1 on his car. He would like to have the number 1 on his car should he win the championship. But could he be taking that number 1 to Toyota next season? That could be quite interesting to see, and well, that will definitely be something that Yuri will need to memorise when it comes to garage order. Really, he needs to remember that Toyota will still be the bottom garage, even if they've got the world champion, because it goes in.
Only thing I really could say, Joe, if he still kept the number 1, the only thing I really could say is that he's just going to become no, that's just an opinion. I think I would say it will just end up like Damon Hill. And I wouldn't say he would end up like him, but I would say like the move he made into Arrows in 1997. Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, I mean, Lopez is obviously looking at this as a new challenge for Toyota to hopefully take them to the point where they can challenge for titles in the future. And well, given the caliber of Lopez, it wouldn't surprise me if he's able to drag that team to victories and championships in the future. But of course, we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, a new challenge for him, so I wouldn't expect him to be fighting for the championship unless they have a Lamborghini-style first season where they're challenging at times for victories. But yeah, given the new system that Yuri put in at the beginning of this season when it comes to the pecking order, I think if they were to have a decent season, I think victories may have to come via luck, providing, of course, how quick the Toyota is. Because, of course, when we got to the other sign-ups, of course, we're not aware of what Toyota's pace is going to be like, because they didn't have a trend, given the fact they are a new team. So it's a little bit of a mystery in terms of what the Toyota is going to be like in its first season. As car improves to go up into 4 positions. So the top 4 is basically now the status quo of Red Bulls and Mercedes at this point, with Roke currently at the top. So with just over 15 minutes to go, this is what the leaderboard currently looks like then. The pack actually only separated by 1.4 seconds at the moment, which is pretty close. Might have something to do with the track, in fact. So Roke is at the top with Lopez in 2nd, Byrne is in 3rd, followed by Carr in 4th, Patel in 5th, Perinin in 6th, followed by Kloss in 7th, Galloway in 8th, Kupok in 9th, followed by Quarg in 10th, Macho is in 11th, with Chatfield 12th, Gal in 13th, Chung 14th, Willows in 15th, Martins in 16th, with Decelli in 17th, Valdinger in 18th, Griffiths 19th, De Rosa in 20th, Sontag 21st, and Videri in 22nd position. And as mentioned, the whole pack only separated by 1.4 seconds. Very, very close indeed between the whole pack, and I think the track itself has got something to do with that, given that it is quite a fast track.
Wait, hold
so,
on. Oh, wait, hold on. Wait, I'm getting a phone call.
Okay, fair enough. So the top 15, it must be pointed out, under a second separating them. Could that be something to keep an eye on in qualifying when we get hit to qualifying a little bit later on? And especially as well when we're seeing drivers having some oversteer moments, especially over these bumps. That could be very interesting. That could be crucial for somebody trying to take pole position on this track. As Quarg now, they're making his way towards the chicane through the left and then through the right-hander. He will go using a bit of curb on the outside before making his way through the final turn and onto the pit straight, and he does not improve on that occasion, currently in 10th position. And well, it must be said that Renault really need to... in fact, I say that Perrin finished 7th. He actually didn't finish 7th in Bahrain. That was a mistake on my end. He actually retired towards the end of the race. So, really, more mechanical problems for Renault. And, well, you can kind of understand why this season's been frustrating. If it's not the team making strategic errors and it's down to the reliability of the car, you can kind of understand why Evan Byrne, of course, left the team at the end of last season, of course, to join Red Bull. And, well, you can see how much of a difference it's made, of course. Obviously, it's a lock up there for QPOC, and I think that could be something we could be seeing, as mentioned, quite a lot during qualifying a little bit later on, but it has given the Ferrari behind a run on him there. That Ferrari, I think, is Jake Galloway. Our car further improves, but remains in 4th position. Only 8 thousandths now off of Evan Byrne. Is the Ferrari going to go around the outside into this right-hander? The answer to that is no, and Galloway has to hang back for the moment now then, as we look at Sontag, who's currently in 22nd. Congratulated his future teammate, of course, Julius Anderson, on Twitter, of course. If anybody who didn't see, Julius Anderson won the World Champ Car title yesterday with a Pyramid, as shocking of all, winning the Teams Championship in kind of a out-of-nowhere star way, like what MP Motorsport did in GP4 a few seasons ago. So, history kind of repeating itself in the OC, albeit in a different series, because even Flo, who's obviously hosting this, was caught a little bit by surprise when he joined the stream right at the end there. So, yeah, that's pretty much that. As now we look at QPOC, who's currently, I think, just been overtaken by the Ferrari now, actually, unseen by the cameras, as he goes over the bumps through into that first corner. Another lock-up for QPOC there, clearly pushing very hard in towards turn 1 there. A few cars in the pit lane right now as we speak. And, well, that's that really. Apologies if I keep on clearing my throat, of course. For some reason, because of hay fever, I keep on losing my voice every now and again, so apologies for that in advance. But anyway, as Verderi has just gone up into 19th place, so now the whole pack now is separated by 1.2 seconds, so very, very close indeed throughout the entirety of the field at the moment. And yeah, as mentioned, that could be something to really keep an eye on when we get to qualifying a little bit later on. Verderi, of course, as confirmed, of course, if you missed the news video, will be moving to Ferrari next season alongside Chris Chatfield. He will be replacing Jake Galloway at that team next season. So the car that's in front of him there, he will be driving that in 2023, and I think Verderi will definitely be looking forward to that. And of course, the other news as well, if you missed it, of course, Patel will be moving to Sauber next season to partner alongside Bent Valdinga, as Quarg has a moment there coming around that right-hander. And again, drivers, it's safe to say in this session, really finding the limits around this new racetrack.
Yeah, I could see everyone's just trying to get used to the track, and
I think Blake's just having a few lag problems there. Meanwhile, Evan Byrne has just gone up into 2nd place. In the meanwhile, the gap 22 seconds, 22 thousand, I should say. So currently, there's a Red Bull 1-2. The top 3 actually separated by 800 of a second. And yeah, I think Blake is suffering from a bit of lag.
Yeah, it's improved.
Oh, there you go. It's just improved there. You were that. You sounded like a little bit of a broken radio. You're going it, basically like that, Blake. That was what the lag was like, as everybody heard on the stream there. But yeah, I think it's now smoothed out.
Sorry.
I think it's now smoothed out on your end there. I think it might be just a little bit of an internet issue on your end there. So yeah, unless it might be Discord. It might be Discord. You never know, of course, because if it's not the internet, then it might be Discord playing up for some people. Because I did notice as well before we went on the air, of course, that Discord. I don't know if Flo noticed this as well, but it was actually playing up a little bit before we went on the air a little bit. Some people saying it might have gone down a little bit. It was like people were struggling to load up messages for quite a while, but it seemed to rectify itself quite quickly there. So, I mean, what, Flo? I'm a little bit confused. Oh, okay. Look at my name. Okay. I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but okay. I'll probably look at that in a minute. But oh, okay, fair enough. Oh, no, because it still says Dioka on my end, Flo. I don't see that. I'm not aware that your name has been cut out.
It's the hashtags.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can still see your name on my end. So, yeah, there was a bit of an issue with Discord before we went on the air, but luckily it kind of rectified itself before we went on the air. Otherwise, that would have been a disaster for Flo's first top-class stream, that's for sure. So, kind of lucky there on that regard. But anyway, we have just under 9 minutes to go now in this practice session, and this is what the leaderboard currently looks like then. We're just under 9 minutes to go. It is Roke at the top, with Byrne in second, Lopez in third, Carr in fourth, with Patel in fifth, Perinen is in sixth, with Kloss in seventh, and then it is Galloway in eighth, Kupok in ninth, with Quag in 10th, Marcho is in 11th, with Chatfield 12th, Gal in 13th, Chung 14th, Willows is in 15th, with Martins in 16th, DeChelli's just gone up to 17th, De Rosa in 18th, Valdinger is in 19th, with Videri in 20th, Griffiths 21st, and Sontag in 22nd position. And, that's that. Well, I don't have Skype anymore, Flo, so that would have been a bit of a problem. But, luckily that we didn't have to go down that route. So at the moment now, we mentioned earlier on that it was 1.4, but now the whole pack is separated by 1.2 seconds. Pretty close indeed. We're running on board with Rahul Patel. He's up on his personal best in the first sector. Currently in 5th place at the moment is the Indian driver, who will be driving for Sauber next season as he goes underneath the crossover section of the racetrack, and he's now down on his personal best in that middle sector. Of course, I would say that maybe the first sector, like we've seen on some other racetracks, is not really one to really keep an eye on when it comes to whether they're up or down or not, because it's really only one braking zone, and it's only really a medium speed corner really, so you can't really take too much into that. It's basically the rest of the track where you have to find out if they're up or down on their personal best, as De Rosa meanwhile goes up to 16th in the McLaren now then. And of course still a mystery as to who will be at McLaren next season. Will it still be Joseph Willows? Will it be David Kupok, who's recently just become a contender for McLaren, as you may have seen in the news video? Could it be Wojtek Kulizec? Could it be Nicolas Zorbach? Who knows, really? It's going to be quite interesting. Of course, Willows is linked with Mercedes as well, along with Perrin and Chung and Gal, of course. So it'd be interesting to see who ends up getting that second Mercedes seat in 2 weeks' time alongside Armar Carr. As Willows now then making his way around the right-hander before he makes his way towards the last chicane now, then before he makes his way onto the pit straight. We ride on board with Johannes Martins, who's currently in 17th place. Of course, his penultimate race with Aston Martin before he makes his way over to Renault next season alongside Roman Quag, and it'll be interesting to see what he can do in a car that in theory should be a better car than what the Aston Martin is. So that's that really, as they now make their way around the final corner as Martins just finishes his lap. They're still in 17th place at the moment. Of course, Aston Martin, let's not forget as well, on the topic of them, scored points last time out in Bahrain thanks to Andre Videri. Was originally 9th on the road, but he was obviously promoted to 8th in the end thanks to Jake Galloway's 10-second time penalty that he got at the beginning of the race for causing a crash with Kirishima De Rosa at the start of the race. So in the end, of course, Galloway, who finished 8th on the road, ended up dropping outside of the points. So he didn't just fall behind Videri, the man who will of course be replacing him at Ferrari next season, but he also fell behind Bence Valdinga, who picked up 2 more points for Alfa Romeo, and by some miracle he was able to keep Lamborghini's point streak alive because Chung was elevated into 10th place. And we come here into round 20. Lamborghini have still got this point streak which they have had now for just over, well, for nearly a season now. They've had it, as Perinen goes a little bit wide there, they've had it now since last season's Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And if they continue their point streak here this week at Argentina, then they will go a season without finishing outscoring no points. So that's that really. And they'll be hoping they can continue that streak up. Could they go a full season with scoring points? That's what I will be very curious about, and then they can rate that as a very consistent season indeed, despite the fact, of course, that this season's Lamborghini fell back in terms of performance, it must be said. But it's safe to say that Patel and Chung this season have put in some stellar performances in that car.
Yeah, that's the only thing I really could say. Patel is fast career in the right situation, but when it's about day for Patel, it actually pours rain. So hopefully Lamborghini get their act together next season. I'll possibly challenge for a top 4 finish. Top 4 finish probably.
Indeed, and we'll have to wait and see what Lamborghini can do. Of course, Lamborghini will be having a brand new lineup next season. Well, it is expected to anyway, because, well, we've got Patel, of course, who's going to Sauber next season, but Laura Chung, of course, making it clear in her sign-up choices that she wants to leave the team at the end of the season, with her link with being with both Mercedes and Haas, of course. So it'd be interesting to see where Laura ends up next season. So it is expected that Lamborghini will have a new lineup as Byrne now goes to the top of the timing sheets by only 0.02 of a second. So only 0.02 separating the two Red Bull drivers there. I should point out as well, because we didn't mention it at the top of this practice session, the tyres we are using for this race are the medium tyres. Of course, we went the last 2 races with hard tyres, of course, and of course with the new rules that came in at the beginning of this season, which said that you can't have compounds for 3 meetings in a row. It meant that the hard tyre that was used for the last 2 races at Bahrain and Mexico were not eligible to be used at Argentina, as Chile has a moment going under the bridge there. So it meant that it was either going to be the soft or medium tyres that got used, and it was the medium tyres that were selected for the first ever Argentine Grand Prix. So really, it could make strategy very, very interesting, because obviously medium, as said in the name, of course, middle of the road. So we don't really know what the strategy is going to be like around here and what the degradation is going to be like with these tyres.
Indeed. So I think if you want to bring the soft tyres here, we might want to get Diggy on Brave, but I don't think it will be a good idea to bring the soft tyres here. Especially with all these fast corners. Sure, it gives you more grip, but it will be pretty fast, especially at the first corner. You can lock up very easily into this corner. So yeah.
Indeed so, as we have just under 3 minutes to go now in this session. Chatfield trying to have a Red Bull into that chicane, but it's not going to work out. That Red Bull being George Rope there, as Chatfield will now make his way through the final turn as he crosses the line now then, and the gap 1.3 seconds off of Byrne in the end, thanks to that hold-up from Byrne's teammate Roke, of course. Patel coming back into the pits, and I think that might be his final run for this practice session. We won't see him again until qualifying starts a little bit later on, of course, as Patel now making his way around the chicane now. Then he goes, using quite a lot of curb on the outside before making his way around this long, swooping right-hander now. Then he will go, as he will head his way back into the pits very, very soon, just after he takes the chicane, of course, as he now makes his way in towards this chicane through the left and then through the right-hander. He goes, as he will now peel his way into the pit lane, which he does do. So into the pits goes Patel, and I think that will be his session done with before qualifying. Willow's having a bit of a moment through that long swooping right-hander there, just as he's trying to get onto the back of that Haas there. That's in front. Willow's currently 15th, DeRosa 16th, so yeah, it looks like McLaren might be struggling a little bit around this racetrack. And given that throughout this season McLaren have been struggling a little bit with suspension in terms of it braking quite a bit, given there's bumps around here, I think their suspension could be put to the test.
Yes, indeed. I think the bumps will definitely affect qualifying. I think, in my personal opinion, but I think it's very obvious about my team setup here, because I just realised that McLaren and AlphaTauri had the most lockups when it comes to the first corner, I think.
Yep, indeed. As we have just over a minute to go now, we'll be pretty soon taking a look at who's going to be last across the line. Lopez has got the checkered flag next to his name, but that doesn't mean that his session is over yet. It just means that once he comes back in, that will be his session. Don't with us all! Crash there between Byrne and the Aston Martins there just to end the session. So that will be them done with. I'm not sure which Aston that was he took out there, but that was Byrne and Vaderi. So their session comes to an end. Just under a minute to go there. So that's pretty much that for those two.
Yeah, I know. So there's a lot of debris all over the place, and I think there's a Renault stopped on the track. I think. Yes,
there is some debris on the track, but luckily I don't think anybody has run it.
Also, there's a Renault on the main straight, I think, as well. Let's see here.
So let's have a... No, I think that was Quag in the pits from what you saw there. And yeah, I think it was more 2 into 1. Doesn't really go out, really. And, well, Byrne and Vaderi crashing into each other as a result of that, really. And, well, that's their practice session done with as a result of that, because we've only just got a minute to go now left in this session. But we'd gone a full distance without somebody crashing or having a mechanical failure, and right towards the end of the session we have 2 cars crashing out right at the end of this practice session, that being Byrne and Vaderi, of course. And well, that's their session done with as a result, as Quag is getting wheeled back into the garage there, as Byrne's car is still wheeling down down the track at the moment. Vaderi, I think, has he had his car cleared? I think Vaderi's car has been cleared, as the seconds continue to tick down. 20 seconds left. Who's going to be the last to cross the line, of course, because that's something we need to bear in mind, of course. Sontag crossed the line. He does not improve. Willows is back in. His session is done with. Lopez, 10 seconds left. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and now 0. And the checkered flag is out. That's the end of the session. Decelli was the last car to cross the line in the end there. So we will wait for Decelli to cross the line before officially completing this practice session. So the yellow flags have now been cleared at that chicane. So both Byrne and Videri, their sessions are now done with as a result of that. Griffiths just coming around the final corner. He does not improve. Kloss, no improvement for him. He stays where he is. Chong is on a lap at the moment. She's coming down towards that right-hander, I think now. Then Perinen, no improvement for him. Galloway crosses the line, no improvement for him. Here comes George Roki, comes back in. Valdinger, no improvement for him. Sontag's coming back into the pit, so that will be his session done with. So Sontag is done for the session, as is Lopez. We might as well go to Decelli now then, because he's the last one on a lap now then, and that will be the session done with once he crosses the line and he's off on his personal best in the middle sector there. A few cars with checkered flags next to their names due to how quick this racetrack is. As Decelli now then making his way towards the chicane now then we go. And Decelli will soon be crossing the line now then as he makes his way towards the final corner, and across the line will go Dominic Decelli, and that is the session done with Byrne at the top, Roque in second, and Lopez in third position. So really status quo with the top four despite the close gaps, Blake.
Yes, indeed. I think this may be a theme for the rest of the weekend, unless something happens in qualifying. But however, the quote status is still upheld by the two Red Bulls and the two Mercedes. And also fact, Carr has dropped off compared to Lopez. Well, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So that's that then for practice. We're just going to obviously end the stream now, and then we'll come back with a fresh stream for qualifying. But in the meantime, guys, I've been JW97, he's been Blake, and we'll see you in just a little bit for the qualifying session. See you in a bit.